for this.
Dear Mitch, thank you so much for your remarks. To me, it's mind-boggling the fact that the World Bank provides access to billions, hundreds of billions of dollars, and a lot of that is being committed to fighting the climate crisis. And I completely agree with you that a clean and just energy transition cannot wait, both in the power sector as well as in the transportation sector. So with that, I would like to invite all of our panelists from this first panel. So Daisuke, Marisol, and Mitz, to please turn on your cameras and your videos, as well as my co-moderator, Naoki Nagai. We are going to be going now into a Q&A for about 5, max 10 minutes. And I'm going to be re-inviting audience members to please enter your questions into the Q&A that you may have for this very first panel. So can I please turn it over to you, Naoki? Do you have a question that you would like to offer to our panelists?
Okay, let me start. And then for all the audience, now is a good time to ask questions. We will be sharing the presentations, but then to ask question now is the time. So please take the opportunity to put in your questions in the Q&A. So I would like to start with a question to all three of you. So it's amazing amount of effort and funding and support for each organizations doing each in the Pacific Islands region alone. But at the same time, we see that the challenges of the climate change is enormous, and even of how much each of your organizations is doing, you can always use coordination, collaborations. So I'm wondering, maybe could you explain or share some of the ways that the three of your organizations like work together, or other ways that you wish to work together more among JICA, USAID, and World Bank?
This is Watanabe. Can I say something first? I just would like to explain a little more about our collaboration in the PCCC as I introduced in the presentation. Because I just say just one word. What we are facing is actually, as you know, the capacity of many island countries in the Pacific region is not so huge. So to some extent, our cooperation tends to go by the grant assistance rather than loan assistance, meaning our finance is not so much big. So as you mentioned, we need to collaborate quite effectively and efficiently with other organizations. And in terms of the grant assistance and technical cooperation as well, as I just mentioned, JICA's activities needs to focus on some specific program or project, meaning we need to decide when to start, when to end, what is the input from Japan, like how many experts and who will be the lecturers on the seminars, workshop, and so on. We can support that kind of specific activity. However, not only the specific activity, but also some other general support is also necessary in order to continue our activity, like of course, general operation cost of that center, like electricity or many other logistics. Also, these supporting staff are also necessary, not specifically for that specific program, but also the operation of that center. So as I mentioned, the purpose is the same. However, what we can do is different from donors to donors. And I found that some donors and some governments are, how to say, more advanced to provide supporting. If it is leveled by the climate change issue, then some participants are, how to say, more flexible than our activities. So in that case, we can find a very good collaboration, because we don't have to split one specific project or program. we can provide what we can do from each members. So I think that is one key for us to pursue more collaboration and cooperation in this Pacific region. That's what I would like to say. Thank you.
Thank
Great.
you.
I can,
Go ahead.
oh, go ahead. Oh, I was going to add, thank you so much, Watanabe. I think for us, I share some of your challenges as well in terms of how we also offer assistance. In the past, we have been able to do government to government funding. And, you know, in the past, we had what we called the non-project assistance, right? But we are continuing to work much more through cooperative grants, agreements, and other types of agreements. But I would say that right after the Tonga volcano, there was a collaboration between JICA and USAID where we were trying to see, kind of compare notes, you know, from disaster response and kind of research on the ground, active research, obviously, what happened and trying to assess the situation. And we were able to share. And I think that a big part of what we're trying to do to work better is to have more presence on the ground. You may have all heard we are starting up a new Pacific Islands mission to be based out of Fiji, Suva. And that is a big deal for us because we've been working through minimal presence. And I think part of what is a strength of creating relationships is that face-to-face, not just with JICA, the World Bank, other colleagues here on the call, but with the countries themselves. So that's one way, you know, when we look at specific areas of collaboration, we're trying to identify with different development partners and other donors. And we're also even looking at that collaboration piece, as you saw in the the new climate finance activity that we're working on. That really is something that resonates very strongly across, I call it, you know, I've seen different diagrams when you try to map out who is who and who is doing what. And there's one that drew my attention. It looked like a bowl of spaghetti, a bowl of noodles. And it, you know, it was like the big bowl of madness of noodles because everything is so intertwined. So really trying to sort that out and figure it out. I think that's where the presence really makes a difference. So that's one of the things that we're trying to do. Not only increase presence, but also make sure that we are linking specifically with the different partners to identify collaboration opportunities.
Okay, thank you, Naoki. Can I just make two quick points? First one is, I think I just would like to emphasize the importance of government's leadership. For successful coordination to happen and be effective, I think it's really important the government is you know, front and center and in the driver's seat to drive this agenda forward. And where that is happening, we see successful cases of good coordination. Where that is not, perhaps less so, then there could be some challenges. So in country-based government ownership, I would just like to mention that as a first principle. And then the second point I would like to mention as a key unique feature of the Pacific is that there are many active regional organizations that are active to help coordinate activities, all our activities, because there are many countries, many vast stretch of regions that we need to cover. And therefore, there are crop agencies, there are Pacific Power Associations, there is Pacific Regional Infrastructure Facility, PRIF. All these entities are there, and some of which most like us, development partners, all JICA, USAID, World Bank, we are all party to PRIF, for example. And we do sit together and spend some time together to make sure that our priorities are aligned. Thanks.
Thank you for those answers. Thank you, Naoki. I see that we have two questions on the Q&A. What I'm going to do is that I am going to actually ask both questions, and then I'm going to open it up to all of the panelists to respond. I will ask, however, that because we're right on time and we're going to be moving on to the next panel here very soon, if you could be very brief with your responses. And sorry about that, but we have so much content to cover today, and there's so many great questions coming through. So the comment is, I have been dispatched from a Japanese power company to EBRD in the UK to provide technical support for the storage battery business. There are some barriers to promoting storage batteries. In fact, the initial cost is very high. Even if there are no technical problems, I feel that financial difficulties arise or are there. The World Bank seems to support EVs and storage batteries. but how are you promoting that? So seems like a question is being addressed to you, Mitz. And then the second question is, how do we get grant support for several Pacific Island nations that are willing to utilize our climate and energy resilient solutions, specifically Samoa, Palau, FSM, RMI, Cook Islands, etc.? I'd like to open it up. Maybe we can begin with Mitz and then go from there.
Okay, I guess if we have to be very brief, I think the fundamental part is that we need to have a good policy and utility operating environment to make those battery investments happen. That's one. Two, to buy down the cost of capital, we try to provide concessional financing initially to support introduction of battery energy storages and so forth, so that in comparison, it becomes, relatively speaking, more attractive compared to when you have to do it on a complete cost recovery basis. Now, we of course need to discuss who is going to pay for it. In the Pacific, we try to maximize the availability of really soft financing, ideally in some cases grant, but in most cases concessional lending to facilitate the introduction of those capital intensive investments.
Thank you, Mitz. Marisol, Watanabe, would either of you like to comment further?
I'll pass on this one. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much all for your comments. Watanabe, Mitz, Marisol, really appreciate all of your comments and your presentations. For the audience, please be advised, we are going to be sending out an email after the forum. It'll have information on how to access this forum's recording, as well as everybody's presentations, and also the agenda, which is up on PICHTR's website, should have been emailed already to you. I also put it in the chat, has the contact information of all of our panelists. So with that, I'd like to ask Naoki if we can please go to panel number 2. Thank you, Naoki. So panel number 2, here we're going to be talking about insights from recent success cases of climate projects in Pacific Island countries. And first up is going to be Jake Hamstra. He is the Chief Communication Officer at the East-West Center. And he's going to be talking about promoting just, engaged, civic-minded, and transparent governance in the Pacific, project governance with USAID. And I'm really excited to see and hear what Jake has to say about this topic of governance. I keep hearing almost every speaker so far has been touching on the topic of governance. So with that, Jake, may I please turn it over to you?
Well, hello, everyone. Can you hear me and see my screen? Okay, first of all.
Yes, Jake, you're good. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you. So yes, good afternoon. Good morning, all, and aloha again from Hawaii, from the East-West Center. My name is Jake Hamstra, and as Veronica mentioned, I am the lead for project governance at the East-West Center here in Honolulu. So to echo the others, I just wanted to start out by saying thank you. It's a real privilege to participate in this important event and on this distinguished panel. And really thanks very much to everyone at PICHTR, especially Dennis, Naoki, and Veronica for creating this forum today. So in terms of my remarks today, I was asked to speak about project governance, which is one of the largest US government regional investments in development in the Pacific Islands. It spans the entire region. And it stands for promoting just, engaged, civic-minded, and transparent governance. And it really comes off well just after some of the comments from colleagues in the previous panel, and also Marisol's perspectives from USAID. This is a USAID funded project. It's $20 million overall, and echoing again some of the themes around collaboration with organizations in the region around ownership by Pacific governments. It is
essentially and at its core, a collaboration among several organizations. And the lead is the Pacific Community, largest crop agency based in Suva and Numia. And it also includes the East-West Center, in addition to us, the International Foundation for Electoral Systems and Care. So Pacific governance is not primarily a climate change project, but I wanted to cover it today because I think it'll be useful. Just some insights, general insights for people looking to develop regional collaborations in the Pacific Islands. In particular, I think one thing that's interesting is the design of the project. So it offers an example of trying to put the context and needs of the Pacific Island countries. Several speakers have already emphasized this, and it's really key at the center of projects and proposals and building collaborative approaches around that orientation. And then I think the second reason is that some of the topics and areas of activities, which I'll go through in a bit, offer kind of valuable insights and context around the operating environment in the Pacific Islands. So I'm going to just talk quickly about the history of the project, how it came to be, an overview of our main activities, and then finally some of the takeaways from the design philosophy that might be applicable to other Pacific projects in the works. So first, just in terms of the project history, project governance actually took a couple of years to put together. It started out in 2019. The East-West Center, among others, submitted proposals for an initial $12 million project called the Pacific Good Governance Initiative. This was coming from the State Department, the US State Department. But ultimately that funding wasn't released. And in the next year, USAID put out a large proposal for a revised governance project. It was based on the same principles as the first one, wanting to promote good governance in the Pacific region, but it had a special focus on engagement. Again, as others have already emphasized, the need for engagement with regional organizations. So that collaboration with the Pacific Islands Forum, with the Pacific community, with other organizations was built into the requirements. And that was I think a really important and a really visionary element for USAID to put into the initial proposal. So what we did at the East-West Center in terms of building the collaboration, we reached out to the Pacific community. We agreed to do a joint proposal. We ensured that SPC as a crop agency was central to the project. Again, that regional ownership piece. And within the overall proposal, the East-West Center has a quarter of it. It's $5 million across 5 years. And we're focused on journalism and financial governance trainings. We're focused on providing scholarships to governance leaders from the Pacific Islands, and then also an online portal for the entire project. A little bit about what the other partners are doing. SPC is focused on providing small grants to civil society organizations. They're working on open data workshops and trainings, and importantly, strengthening national human rights institutions across the region. IFAS, International Foundation for Electoral Systems, based in DC, their work focuses primarily on supporting access to free and fair elections, and they're also working with SPC around the human rights space. And then CARE, a fourth partner in this collaboration, is focusing on participatory governance, and they're developing mechanisms like community scorecards for women's empowerment, participation in local government. So the overall point is that it took a sustained attempt over a while to build a collaboration and try and implement some of these principles that others have been talking about, the importance of collaboration, the importance of regional ownership, the importance of enabling a regional project through the involvement of multiple organizations in different sectors. In terms of the project's activities, I won't dwell on all the detail here, but essentially project governance represents a portfolio of efforts to try to support capacity development across economic, policy, and government frameworks in positive ways. And so these, if you look at the main objectives, these span sound government efforts, and these are focused on the public sector. They include just governance efforts focused on promoting rule of law, and they include responsive governance efforts that are focused on strengthening civil society. And I guess it goes without saying that all of these arenas together, and it's important to tackle them together in an interconnected way, are really important as background, as context for the success of all the kinds of particular investments and initiatives that folks here are focused on. In terms of the East-West Center, just real briefly, our particular activities, what we are focused on is financial governance, and this has been mentioned as well. And I think rightly so, there's emphasis on the need for capacity support focused on hearing needs of the region, on on the compliance needs and on the administrative needs that are essential to the kinds of projects that folks here want to promote, want to implement in the region. So at the East-West Center, we have a multi-pronged, a four-pronged effort to try to build that financial governance capacity. And it involves programs in media training. So that's the accountability and transparency piece. It's working with financial agencies that are part of the governments in most cases, and how to vet, how to understand, how to build the administrative capacity for proposals and future projects through educating governance leaders, folks coming here to Hawaii and doing advanced degrees in law and public finance to then go back into governments and boost capacity, which may be insufficient in many of countries in the Pacific Islands. And then finally, online public engagement, and that's sort of the overall website piece of the project, illustrating the collaboration and the positive impact of taking that collaborative approach. So altogether, it's kind of in the background, whether it's a climate change project, renewable energy initiative, property development, anything, these sorts of projects, there are kind of essential capacities that are needed for those collaborations to succeed. Not just their specific objectives, but also more broadly in terms of being positive for country stability and prosperity, and avoiding some of the risks that come with the sorts of projects that all folks here are involved in and want to enhance around lack of transparency, even the potential for corruption and those sorts of risks. So it's, again, those broader conditions of success for projects that are focused of project governance. Last but not least, I wanted to just cover some of the basic project design takeaways from project governance. This has already been emphasized, which is fantastic, by Marisol from USAID and others. But really the most basic is the need for a people-centered approach. And this concept was central to the design of the project, the discussions with SBC that led to it. Just this idea of placing the people and their environment at the center of development planning, implementation, decisions, and the monitoring and reporting. The overall idea, obviously, for a cultural context to inform which services are delivered for sustainable development across all sectors, especially climate change being central to the continuity, physical, cultural of many countries in the region as they're on the front line of that challenge. In practice, how this has worked out for our projects has meant that we engage in continuous and really deep consultation with the project stakeholders, with regional governments, with civil society organizations, and with participants in the activities. So for all of our elements of our projects, we are forming advisory groups of people from the region who we workshop the proposals for how we structure things with, and then also travel throughout the region to ensure that government ownership is something that's real. And not just token in terms of how the projects are implemented. The second takeaway, real quickly, has just been the need for hub and spoke project management. Again, this goes to the presence point that others have emphasized, but the idea that there are strong working relationships between groups on the ground throughout the region, and there's a central project administration that's also able to encompass that in a flexible way. So all the partners meet really frequently. We talk a lot. And those discussions build into how we are implementing the project. I think this has already been the basis of my remarks on how the project came to be and the fundamentals of its design, but just this idea of partnership. Having a model that allows for emergent collaborations, we found has been incredibly important in the region, and also in particular, including the crop agencies, others have mentioned, regional multilateral institutions. In our partnership, we have a professional development NGO, we have a crop agency, we have an organization based in the United States, an organization based in Australia. So getting that region-wide view and input and discussion around the project implementation, we found to be incredibly important. Finally, last but not least, the takeaway through project governance and through the partnership activities that it encompasses has been that there's a need for flexibility if projects are going to be sustainable. It's very tempting to prescribe at the beginning of a project how exactly it will go. But again, back to the people-centered approach and listening to the needs of the region as the project is implemented, the central focus has to be on the relationships as well. So investing in relationships with governments, with the regions, that the organizations that you're working with in the region, essential not only to individual project success, but also the design of future work. So as more international funding is moving into the Pacific, grants, funding streams are not only intermittent, but there's also the spaghetti bowl, the noodle bowl issue that's been raised previously. And so project design, it's really, really important that it invests in the people and networks, and then giving it the flexibility to adapt when funding streams end or intertwine or need to be deconflicted. So really that flexibility being the final takeaway from project governance. I will end there. I hope some of these broad overview aspects from project governance might inform some of the discussions that go on, and also happy to take any questions that come up. Thank you.
Jake, thank you so much. That was excellent. I really appreciate the approach that your project took in terms of having a multi-party collaboration with a strong emphasis on collaboration with Pacific Island country people. As President Suzanne Bar-Islam said earlier in her remarks, cannot talk about the Pacific without the Pacific. So really appreciate East-West Center walking the talk and serving to build bridges to connect stakeholders in the Pacific and abroad. So with that, thanks again. And next, I would like to introduce Benjamin Martin. He is Assistant Manager at Senesis. And hopefully I pronounced that correctly, Benjamin. If not, let me know how to pronounce it correctly next time. He is going to talk about technology development and deployment with SATREP projects. So with that, Benjamin, may I please turn it over to you? Thank you.
So thank you for the opportunity to discuss with you today and join everyone on this panel and everyone in the presentation as well. My name is Benjamin Martin. I live in a small island in Okinawa Prefecture called Kumijima. And we've been supporting the Institute of Ocean Energy Saga University in a joint Japan-Malaysia project under the SAPTREPS framework. And so I'd like to talk a bit about that today. And it's kind of bringing down to a very specific type of project that might be a reference for future efforts in the Pacific. So to jump into it, the Science and Technology Research Partnership for Sustainable Development is a Japanese government project focused on the Japan Science and Technology Foundation Agency in cooperation with JICA, the Japan Internal Cooperation Agency, on technology development and research, and also with the Japan Agency for Medical Research and Development on specific kind of health-related efforts as well. So there's 4 major research fields, and so this is a more of an overall focus on joint government to government researching on specific technologies and efforts, such as environment and energy, bioresources, disaster prevention and mitigation, and infectious disease control. So for the project we work on is development of advanced hybrid ocean thermal energy conversion, OTEC technology for low carbon society and sustainable energy systems. So it's a first actual experimental plant, an actual facility that actually just arrived yesterday in Malaysia. And so that's an ongoing project. On the Japan side, it's being led by Saga University and the University of Tokyo and ACE. Actually, on March 1st, the Institute of Ocean Energy was awarded a Prime Minister's commendation for advancements in helping Japan come forward as a maritime nation. On the Malaysia side, several universities are involved, including the University of Technology Malaysia, University of PICHTR Malaysia, and so it's received investment and funding from the Malaysia side as well to work on this specific effort. And so the point of this is develop an Kumijima, take our experience in Japan, bring it to Malaysia, and help them develop their own version of this technology and integration with OTEC as its core. There's actually 10 sub-projects that are going on with influence and cooperation between both sides. The main focus of this is development of an OTEC center where they can actually then develop and produce ocean energy and research it for future development. Alongside of that, there are many different components in terms of developing domestic turbines and heat exchangers, and then use of seawater in different kinds of environments as well. So it's been a really broad engagement focused on the simple technology, which is ocean thermal energy conversion. For those who don't know it, it's essentially ocean marine renewable energy that produces power 24/7 from the temperature difference in the deep sea water and surface seawater. So
Hi.
pretty much any country with deep sea
They
water
can't see
access
me.
can take advantage of this.
Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate
So
it.
the
Perfect.
primary
You doing
initiative
okay?
for this project is creation of a hybrid OTEC research lab. So the concept is adapting two principles of OTEC, closed cycle and open cycle. So water production and power production from a single system. And that concept is then put into actual practice through development of components that are just arrived in Malaysia yesterday, and then will be established in a research center that's under construction as well on site in Malaysia. And that will allow them to then develop the technology and research and continue their efforts in the next years ahead. So this is an exciting project that's going on. It's one of the other aspects is adapting the things that we've done here on Kumijima, where I live, in terms of using ocean thermal energy conversion with the multiple uses of deep sea water for food, water, and energy production, and adapting those efforts to the local needs and designs of Malaysia. And so that's an opportunity where we see each location throughout the Pacific having opportunities to kind of adapt and build on these different benefits from a single resource, which is our oceans. And so these are some of the efforts that we've been doing here in Kumijima, such as coral restoration, oyster farming, trout, salmon farming, prawn farming, all from this one kind of infrastructure. In the future, there's also opportunities for adaptation to hydrogen or ammonia production, freshwater production, seawater air conditioning. Already around the world, 38 sites and about 45 pipes use deep sea water. So it's a growing kind of infrastructure we see for the future. Another major aspect of this is, as we've been talking about in this forum, is capacity building. So we actually bring researchers from Malaysia to Japan and give them on-site research and development experience, hands-on training, both at Saga University and here on Kumijima as well. And so that's been an important aspect. Even through the pandemic, it's been a challenge, but we transitioned to online efforts, video presentations and tours, and we were able to kind of work through that. But the person-to-person exchanges have been a great part of this program, supported through JICA's efforts. And JICA has also provided a lot of other really deep down and important support for this project. JICA has worldwide offices throughout the world. And so the local staff and local knowledge really help support events, support that knowledge exchange, cross-cut through agencies in different fields so that we can apply to the various needs of different projects. And also, as has been a really important part of this project and this discussion today, governance, making sure that the funds are going where they're supposed to be on time and that things are done in a correct way, even when different governments have different rules through different parts of the world. So it's been a really effective and helpful partnership that we've been kind of supporting from a small part of the overall project, but we see this as a kind of a unique opportunity and a unique framework in terms of the SATRIPS project. And we see that there's probably many opportunities for other locations to take advantage of this if there's specific kind of research or technology development interests that might be of interest to both governments. It's probably not as applicable to some of the smaller countries that just need some more direct infrastructure support and things like that. But for some of the larger countries or for larger projects, it's an interesting kind of approach that we found and benefit in Japan. So that's a very short, very quick introduction to that specific project. I would be happy to answer any questions, and hopefully I've saved a little bit of time in the presentation as well.
Benjamin, this is great. Thank you so much. I love seeing this project come to fruition. I met you many years ago, and I think at the time, the project was certainly not as far along. I am really impressed on how you've been able to adapt this project for using ocean thermal to meet the needs of local uses, local needs, as well as working with your students on capacity building. So I think that's just so excellent. Next, I would like to introduce Leon Roos. He is the Chief Technologist at Hawaii Natural Energy Institute for Grid Start. And he's going to be talking about developing renewable energy storage systems for Pacific Island countries. Leon, can I please turn it over to you?
All right, let me share my screen here. Get my, go ahead, hang on a sec. All right, can everybody see my full screen there?
Yes, Leon, everything's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, aloha everyone. My name is Leon Roos. I'm a faculty member here at the Hawaii Natural Energy Institute, which is a part of the University of Hawaii. We've been doing a lot of work, I see over the last, almost decade across the Asia Pacific region, but predominantly more in, I'd say, Southeast Asia and the ASEAN countries. We've had some recent engagements in some of the Pacific Islands, and I want to talk about one today that we just delivered on back in November of 2022, and this was actually an engagement in partnership with another consultancy firm, Delphos, and this was on behalf of the World Bank. So just want to share that with you, and some of our efforts on that, I think, as a example of the kind of work that I think can help in the Pacific region. All right, so these are pretty general statements, but it is something I think that is common and shared amongst island power systems, right? And there's a uniqueness there with island grids in that they have such high reliance on things like imported diesel for generation, and that translates to very high electricity rates, and that's a problem that they need to address, and we need to help them. From a power system standpoint, when they have events on their grid, because their grids are so small and tiny, they have much more impact when they have these events on their grid stability and therefore outages and things and service to customers. So again, managing their grid stability is very important. Being an isolated grid, they can't rely on their neighbor for support, right? So all of their resources, all their capabilities to supply reliable, effective energy has to come locally from that island system. And depending on what island you're on, right, the availability of particularly firm renewable resources may be limited. I think in the Pacific Islands, for example, if you look at places like Fiji and Samoa, they have great opportunity for a lot of hydro, as well as some of the other countries, and they've taken great advantage of it. But some of the other countries simply do not have that resource, right? And they're going to have to probably lean a lot more heavily on things which we call VRE, or variable renewable energy sources, like wind and solar. So those are going to promote challenges, and things like batteries will greatly help that. So in this World Bank project that was commissioned, we completed last year in partnership with Delphos, we evaluated 15 island grid systems across 11 of the Pacific Island countries named here. And one of the things you can see is that, each of these countries, while I think there's uniqueness and commonality in the points I just made in the prior slide, they are quite different in size and scope and availability of resources. So when we do this kind of analysis, and one of the things we looked at in this effort was, how much battery is going to be needed to start to help these countries meet these much higher projections and goals for renewable energy. So we did some technical assessments towards that end, but again, the way you look at that issue and what the needs are going to be somewhat different, despite them all being islands, based on sort of the size of their grids and the nature of their mix of resources. So these are some of the things we explored in this evaluation we performed. Again, as mentioned, in November 2022, we delivered 3 reports in partnership with Delphos. A big focus of this effort was on trying to come up with the policy and technical recommendations that would underlie essentially a strategy on how to move forward on battery acquisitions for these Pacific Islands. Again, they have different economies. different levels of advancement in regulatory frameworks and so forth. And so trying to figure out how to procure battery systems and how will they be effectively procured, cost effectively, et cetera, will differ amongst these different islands. So that was a big focus on, again, sort of a financial strategic view of implementing battery projects in the Pacific. Underlying that, however, was trying to answer this question also, to get to these higher level targets, how much storage will we need? And HNEI's part on this project effort was focusing more on that technical question about identifying and trying to project the storage needs for these islands as they move through their roadmap of higher levels of renewable integration. Reports can be found at this Google Live link. So I think you guys will have access to the slides after, and I welcome anybody to go take a look there and reach out to us if you have further questions. Okay. As I think we all know, battery storage systems can be used for many different functions and purposes, right? A lot of different use cases. I think in the context of Pacific Island countries, right, things like transmission services and some of these end use applications are probably not so much on the roadmap for use of batteries. And what we kind of see, and a lot is based on our experience here in Hawaii, in which we've taken our renewable levels up quite high, and we've had to now leverage a lot of battery energy storage into our grid. I think, you know, a lot of what I'll talk about today is sort of the battery systems that are kind of operating in this area here, which is energy time shifting, right? Grabbing power at the time when the energy is produced by resources like wind and solar and shifting it to times when wind and solar may not be available, or other times when load is higher. So energy shifting batteries, I think, really what you see a lot of the storage coming in for. And of course, you try to layer in as many of these value use cases as you can to drive up the value proposition for the investment made in the batteries. Okay, one of the things that we kind of took away as we from our work and experiences here in Hawaii is, and applied them into the island context of the Pacific Islands, is this sort of understanding that when you look at battery systems, and this is a generalization, but I do think applies quite effectively across island grid applications in particular, is that you can kind of see the need for batteries sort of go through 4 phases as we've described them here. In phase 1, you might need some small batteries, and in many cases, you won't even need any to begin your journey on increasing your share of wind and solar in your power grid as a percentage of your total energy needs. You may need a little here, but that's primarily to do things like some simple grid services, like managing maybe ramping and other things that you might see from these kinds of resources, and beginning to lay a foundation for renewable enablement. But again, you probably don't need much battery here, and I think that's been proven out certainly, at least initially, on the pathway to renewables here in Hawaii. As you get into this next phase, which is where you hit maybe around the 20% to 30% range, you know, batteries, you might start seeing some use and more application of them, possibly in capacity deferral, sort of clipping the peaks of your capacity needs, which helps you defer investments in other firm energy resources. But again, at this point, fairly limited, I think, use or need or real requirement for batteries. However, once you cross into this phase 3 zone, right, which we then really look at batteries for energy shifting and what we call management or mitigation of curtailment, and that's where you have excess production of renewable energy beyond the load at any given point in time. You know, you're either going to waste that energy or grab it and shift it to another period. And so, you know, I think generally you start to see isolated grids sort of hit that point when their VRE resources like wind and solar start to be about 30% of the total energy demand of the islands. And that's really consistent with what we see here in Hawaii. Hawaii is sitting right here right now in this phase 3, and therefore you see renewable energy projects continue to come on, solar, wind, et cetera, but they need storage coupled with it to be able to capture that energy and shift it. Phase 4 is where it gets really tricky, right? And this is when you try to get your renewable, your power systems up to, you know, above 70%, up to 90, maybe even up to 100, you know, and you're trying to use resources like wind and solar, which I think a lot of these Pacific Islands may have to do. What you start to need is storage of very long durations, right? The storage that you need sort of in phase 3 is about 4 hours of storage, okay? We start talking about this, what you need is long duration storage. And that's because resources like wind, for example, may be non-existent for extended periods of time. Long period, a week or two of no wind is going to mean you're going to have to capture a lot of energy. So batteries, sort of in its present state of the market with things like lithium ion and things like, may not really be quite practical here, certainly at the present cost points. Maybe in the future it'll come down, but other technologies really need to be looked at. So this is going to be the challenge, whether it's here in Hawaii or I think other island nations. And some of our analysis, I think, kind of supports that notion. You can see in 2020 sort of the level of renewable energy percentage that you have across these different countries and island grids. You can see again, Samoa and Fiji are pretty far down the path of renewable energy. The issue there, though, and the blessing for them is they have hydro, and so they can utilize that. Many of the others are not quite as fortunate to be able to tap into that as much. Okay. So, sorry, this is all layered in here. I'm going to just click through it to kind of move quickly. But, in that phase 3, right, this issue of managing excess energy curtailment is really kind of a key point, because as you have more and more solar energy, at some point when the sun's shining, you're going to have more production than load. So you're either going to throw away that energy, which is called excess energy curtailment, or you can stick it in a battery. The point always is that, there's a big economic trade-off here because batteries are not cheap, right? So you need to have enough scale in this excess energy to start make the batteries be worthwhile, where you can capture that energy and shift it for the capital investment. But you will definitely, when you hit about the 30% level, and it will vary from island to island, but you're really going to need and see the drive for battery energy storage. So doing this kind of analysis starts to give people a better, clear vision of that roadmap and start preparing on the strategies for procurement of those resources to ultimately meet their needs, right? In the assessment we did, we looked at sort of targets going out into the future. We broke the 11 islands and the grids here into 5 groups, given the different sizes of the grids. And depending on looking out into the future, we had different targets. And these are, someone would argue maybe stretch targets, but I do know a number of the islands do have targets of getting to 100% in the near term. In order to do that, if they're going to do it wind and solar, they're going to need a lot of storage. So we looked at 2 different cases. One being all of the new generation coming online that's renewable would be solar. Another case was a 50-50 mix of solar and wind. And depending on what you're doing and what you're developing, the amount of storage you're going to need is going to be different because the characteristics of those resources differ as well. Okay. So one of the things we did was we developed a spreadsheet-based model, and our intent is to have this open source. I would love to be able to share this with utilities and practitioners in these islands. It looks a little complicated and messy in this slide here, but it's actually very easy to use, where you can put in your renewable target. It's going to help you figure out how much solar you would need to meet that target. It'll then size the battery in terms of megawatt hours to target. And the key here is to try to get your curtailment or the wasted energy produced down to a reasonable level. What I've typically found in our experience is, once you kind of get your curtailed energy down around the 10% or below level, that's kind of a good target. It's not practical to build battery to capture every megawatt hour of renewables produced. I think just the economies don't quite work out. So you can curtail some of it, but you kind of want to keep that curtailment somewhere in about the 10% range. So, you can play with this tool. It's really easy to use, and it'll help you define how much storage you may need, given your objectives of how much solar and wind you may need to then meet renewable energy targets looking out into the future. Okay. This is just sort of a summary of some of the results we had from using this tool and applying it to these different island states and grids. If we looked at a 2030 RE penetration target of 50%, and for these different grids here, and you can see these grids are very small, 3 megawatts, 1.3 megawatts. And in 2020, their percentage of RE was only 5.1%. So this is trying to make a leap from 5 to 50. But in order to do that, if we looked at case one, which is all solar, providing that renewable energy to get to a 50% RE, you can see that a 5 megawatt battery coupled with that's 3 hours in duration or 15 megawatt hours, coupled with a PV penetration of 5 megawatts will get you to this level. These to me seem quite doable, right? The question will be then for these different islands, and this is the other part of the study, which I won't really cover here, but was what are the strategies from a procurement standpoint for batteries? Because what will work in terms of procurement mechanisms and the financing and everything for very small island grids might be quite different than what will work in more developed grids and more financially sound utilities, for example, in Fiji, where they have a lot of power purchase agreements. So the business structure of integrating battery will be quite different here than here. But what this gives you is a good picture of how much storage you'll need. Of course, the real numbers will be based on more detailed studies and analysis, but I do think this gets you pretty well into the ballpark of what you're going to need and starts to help you really roadmap your plans going forward. Case two here is a 50-50 mix of wind and solar. So maybe the big takeaway here is you get to the 50% RE target in either using all solar in this case or wind and solar here. But you can see if you have a diversity of resources, you can actually reduce your battery requirements, which will reduce your capital investment in that. So that's one of the big takeaways, right? That diversity in resources helps you manage your capital investment and get you to your goals with potentially lower cost.
Leon, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but may I please wrap up? Thank you.
I'm sorry?
I said sorry to interrupt you, but may I please ask you to wrap up?
Yeah. And I just gonna mention that there's these 3 slides here that give further breakdown on all these islands. I won't cover them, they'll be in the materials, but happy to answer any questions. And it just kind of shows it increasing levels of RE, what the requirements are going to be for battery storage and integration. Okay, and that's it. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Leon. Really appreciate you sharing about your analysis and roadmap, helping us understand a picture of how much energy each Pacific Island country would need to meet its demand, what type of storage and when to deploy each type of storage to then help with procurement, planning, and execution. So with that, we are running a little bit behind in our agenda, but I would like to turn it over to Naoki, who has a question for panelists Jake, Benjamin, and Leon. And if I can ask you to please turn on your cameras and your microphone. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you, everybody. It's great, but we are right on time. So I'm going to ask you a quick question. So all 3 of you have made great idea into an actual specific project in the Pacific Islands with impact. So what would you say is the one success factor in making idea into a real project? Maybe we start with Jake.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think the key, as I hope I emphasized in the remarks, is really talking to other agencies, other partners working in the area where you want to have an impact. This issue that others have touched on of there being, especially relative to the size of the economies and of the governing capacity and public finance management capacity relative to that, just the multiplicity of actors, of funders, of government partners trying to operate. I think the real key is coordinating with them to avoid duplication.
Thank you. Coordination and
leverage each other's work. Yeah.
Great. Benjamin?
I'd say broad stakeholder involvement, but facilitated or supported by government agencies, government projects to help connect to those needs, but also then deeply connecting with the desires and the needs of the local communities that you're working with has really helped us. So we have broad and very deep partnerships now with our partners on the Malaysia side, which has helped this project be very successful and move forward quickly.
Yeah,
Thank
I'd
you.
agree with what both of my colleagues just stated. I think engagement with the stakeholders is essential, and I do believe there's so much opportunity today for collaboration. Right, there's a lot of players and resources working in the region, so coordination and partnering, leveraging each other's capabilities and bringing more to the table. Right, getting a multiplier effect of through partnerships, I think is incredibly valuable.
Great, thank you. And then there has been a question in the chat whether like the tools that Leon showed is available. For all the audience, please feel free to reach out to panelists or to us at PICHTR. We can help coordinate as well.
Yeah, excellent point, Naoki. A big part of what we're trying to do here is facilitate networking connections in hopes that people here are going to be able to ultimately work on clean energy and climate adaptation resilience projects in Pacific Island countries. So anything we can do to facilitate that, we're certainly open to it. I would like to, again, thank our panelists for panel number 2, Jake Hamstra, Benjamin Martin, and Leon Roos. Thank you for your excellent presentations and remarks. We really appreciate everything that you had to say, and we will be sharing with everybody that registered for this forum. We will be sharing today's recording as well as the presentations. You will receive an email where we will have information on how to access that. Next, I would like to go to panel number 3. And this panel is going to be focused on upcoming climate project opportunities in Pacific Island countries. So again, what we are driving for in this second Pacific Islands Climate Collaborative Forum is working more specifically on projects in Pacific Island countries related to clean energy and climate adaptation and resilience. So I'm hoping that after you hear the presentations and remarks from this panel, you'll have a clear idea on opportunities and ways of being able to do that. So without further delay, I would like to turn it over to Mr. Tadayuki Ogawa. He is a senior advisor for the Japan International Cooperation Agency, JICA, who is going to be talking about a call for proposals from his agency, including an introduction of the program description and funding announcement. May I please turn it over to you, Tadayuki Ogawa, to provide your presentation. Thank you very much. I'm not sure, Mr. Oh, okay.
Hello. Yeah. Good morning and afternoon, everybody.
Oh, wonderful.
And yeah, can you listen to my voice? Yeah.
Yes. Now we can hear you and we can see you, and we're so glad that you are here. Please move forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Once again, good morning and afternoon, everybody. My name is Ogawa Tadayuki, senior advisor working for Japan International Cooperation Agency. And today I'm connecting this webinar from Japan, and very much pleased to meet everybody through online. So today it is my great pleasure to make a presentation about the Green Power Island Program at this forum on the Pacific Islands Climate Collaborative. So please let me share my slide with you all. Okay. All right. So yeah. First, please let me explain the general observation in Pacific Island countries in energy sector from our perspective. The rapid introduction of VRE, variable renewable energy, is ongoing to achieve the national target of carbon neutral and also the RE penetration in power supply. And especially the number of solar IPP projects are increasing in some countries, such as Samoa, Tonga, and others. And we understand the diversification of power sources is important from the viewpoint of energy security. But in reality, many countries are still facing difficulties in operation and maintenance of existing diesel engine generators, and also the newly installed the renewable energy systems, such as solar PV systems. So JICA has been assisting those countries to overcome challenges on the operation and maintenance of diesel engine generators and also the solar PV systems under the ongoing regional technical cooperation project, and also the group training in Japan. So for this reason, we propose to make the best use of existing assets, taking into consideration of the step-by-step energy transition for future decarbonization. So in 2021, we have introduced this Green Power Island program after the Hybrid Island program, which have been introduced in 2015. So under the existing program, this Green Power Island program concept, in addition to the supply side effort for the decarbonization or the introduction of the renewable energies, we will also try to incorporate the activation of the demand side for the further integration of the VRE and also for the energy conservation in the energy sector as a whole. So try to achieve the greener power system in the small island states. That is the overall concept of this Green Power Island program. And this is the overall picture of our project, individual project under this program. So we have been assisting under many projects through the technical cooperation project, which is described in blue characters here, and also under the granted project, including the feasibility study, such as the project for upgrading transmission grid in Palau, or the introduction of the diesel engine generators in the state of Kosrae in FSM, and also the introduction of the wind power generation system in Tonga. So these are the granted projects, and also the soft loan projects have been provided. For example, in Samoa, under the co-finance project with ADB, the power sector expansion project, and also the other SME, small and medium enterprise corporations facilities, such as the introduction of EV, electric vehicle, by private investments in Marshall Islands. So in addition to these individual projects, since 2017, we have been undergoing the regional technical cooperation project, the project for introduction of hybrid power generation system in Pacific Island countries, covering the Marshall Islands, FSM, Kiribati, Tuvalu, and Fiji. So yeah, today I'd like to explain in detail about this regional technical cooperation project. So this is the overall concept of this project, and we are trying to achieve the best combination of the existing diesel engine generators together with the newly introduced the variable renewable energies power generation systems, such as solar PV and wind, as we are aware that for these energy generators, even though we can expect the stable power output, it is subject to the fuel price volatility and also the energy security. So we need further support for the appropriate and economic operation and maintenance on these assets, these energy generators. And as for the renewable energy power generation system, yes, we can expect the solid effect on fuel reduction, but on the other hand, their output depends on weather conditions. So the optimal integration of the renewable energies and also the appropriate operation and maintenance on those assets are also needed. So in combination of these two different technologies, we have been trying to achieve this hybrid power generation system. And the ultimate goal will be the increased energy security by reducing fuel consumption and also the addressing climate change by reducing carbon dioxide emissions. And also, under this project, we have been working with the government of Fiji and Energy Fiji Limited, the utility company there, and also the Pacific Power Association to establish the regional training system centered in Fiji. So just I'd like to share with you some of the highlights of this project, the progress. For example, in Kiribati, now last year, they have conducted the overhaul works of the existing engines by utility staff only without the external support, the supervisors from private companies. So we understand this is a big milestone or the achievement for this project. And also in some countries, such as Marshall Islands, we could improve the specific fuel consumption of diesels units. And as for the renewable energy power generation system, solar PV system, the performance ratio of the PV system could be improved in some countries, such as in FSM. And also now the preparation for grid integration manual and operation maintenance manual for PV system is undergoing and will be finalized very soon. So yes, as mentioned previously, we are now working with the Fiji government and also the EFL, Energy Fiji Limited, for the achievement of this concept of region-wide training, the Regional Center of Excellence at the EFL Lautoka Training Center. So the reason why we have selected Fiji as a hub for the center is already there's a training center in place there, and also the experienced and skilled trainers are available there. And then, of course, in Fiji, there's an office of the PPA, and we can collaborate with PPAs for the further collaboration with other utilities. So now, yeah, we are going to launch the second phase of this project, the energy transition project, same as for the regional technical cooperation project. So we expect that we'll be able to continue working with the Fiji government together with other development partners to further incorporate the other training modules, and also the further invite other Pacific Island countries for this concept of the region-wide training. And under this regional technical cooperation project, also, we have conducted the survey in Samoa to find out how much we'll be able to introduce the variable renewable energy, as the Samoa utility, EPC, is under investigation to stop operation of the diesel engine generators during low demand period and try to achieve 100% renewable energy supply in 2031. So yeah, we have conducted the power system analysis and the simulation in order to consider the required measures for grid stabilization. So this study just covered the island of Upolu in Samoa, but a similar survey was also conducted in Tuvalu as well. So we have been working with the Okinawa Energy company and also the Okinawa Electric company, power company, to utilize their experience and knowledge in the remote islands in Japan, Okinawa. So yeah, these are the chronology and procedures for the training and knowledge sharing in Samoa and also other countries covered under this regional technical cooperation project. So as a result, we found that continued capacity development is required to formulate and fine-tune system model based on on-site actual measurement data, such as voltage or active and reactive power, and also accurate facility information will be needed, such as transmission line impedance and so on. So as a closing remark, I'd like to reinstate that JICA will continuously support Pacific Island countries through Green Power Island program to promote renewable energy integration through mobilizing resources and experience in Japan. And also the capacity development will be continued on through the regional approach under the initiative of Fiji government and the utility company in Fiji and the Pacific Power Association. This is just a picture of our training of trainers at the EFL training center, which is located in Lautoka in Fiji. So yeah, that's it for my presentation, and thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, Ogawa, for sharing about your projects, both the hybrid power generation system project, the grid stabilization study in Samoa. Perhaps during the Q&A, we can talk a little bit more about the second phase of the hybrid power generation system and what sort of opportunities we may be seeing there. So again, thank you for your remarks. Next, I would like to turn it over to Brent Harrison. He is the manager of Indo-Pacific Healthcare and Smart Grid for the U.S. Trade and Development Agency. Brent, may I please turn it over to you? Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Veronica. Let me just share my screen really quick. Hopefully you can all see that. So I appreciate the introduction. My name, again, is Brent Harrison, and as Veronica alluded to, I handle a broad range of portfolios for the U.S. Trade and Development Agency across the Indo-Pacific region. Just first and foremost, want to thank Veronica and Naoki and their colleagues for including us tonight, and just going to go through a little bit of who we are at USTDA, some of the projects that we've done, and how hopefully we can work together.
Brent, before you move forward, if you can go to your display settings at the top, I think we're seeing your slides as opposed to the actual presentation. So next to show taskbar, yes, swap presentation, perfect. Okay, that's excellent. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt you.
No problem. Thanks for letting me know. So just very quickly, USTDA's mission. So we are the project preparation arm of the US government. And what that means in practice is that we are able to deploy our funding on an on-demand basis to support sustainable infrastructure development in emerging markets. So there's kind of two key stakeholders that we engage with all of our infrastructure projects. One are US companies, and then two are the project owners in partner countries such as the Pacific Islands, which I'll get into a little bit more in a minute. A very easy way to remember the types of projects that we look for at USTDA is in the name, trade and development. So for every project, one has to be a positive developmental impact for the partner country in question. And then on the trade side of things, we must support US company competitiveness, and we ultimately track that in the form of exports. So you can see in the upper right-hand portion of your screen, the eligible Pacific markets. All I'll say without going through every single one is that we have the ability to support any low and middle income country as qualifying under World Bank classifications. As I also mentioned, I cover everything in the Indo-Pacific for healthcare, smart grid, and a few other sectors. So we cover everything from Pakistan on through to the Pacific Islands. We do have a physical presence in the region, headed up by our regional office based out of Bangkok, Thailand. And then we do have country offices in India, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam. In the middle of your screen, you'll see the kind of KPI for USTDA. So for every dollar that's invested by the agency, that is equivalent to $136 of US exports generated. We track that on a 10-year rolling average across all of our sectors. And getting into that, we do have 5 priority sectors as an agency. We have a long-standing presence since we were founded in 1992 in energy, ICT, and transportation. And then we recently elevated agribusiness and healthcare as priority sectors in 2019. So we're growing our portfolios in both of those areas. We have 2 sides to our toolbox. So our bread and butter and what we're probably most known for are our project preparation grants, where we fund things along the lines of feasibility studies, master plans, technical assistance, pilot projects, and sometimes a combination of those. So say a feasibility study with a pilot tacked on the end. On the other side of our toolbox are our partnership building programs. These include things like reverse trade missions, where we bring delegates from partner countries to the United States to meet with both businesses and companies, as well as policymakers and regulators, depending on the focus of that trade mission. We also do conferences. The biggest one that we do, and we actually hosted in Japan this year, is the Indo-Pacific Business Forum. We do one-off workshops, and we also do some training. And I have some examples of projects that will provide a bit more color as to what that means in practice. So just a bit on where we come in the infrastructure project development lifecycle. So it's a very specific point. We take projects from sort of the conceptual stage, create the right enabling environment through our project preparation tools to help projects secure financing and then ultimately get implemented in full. Why that's important, it de-risks the project for the company and partners in question. It does give them that initial ability to test technologies and then eventually scale. We help fill gaps in resources and introduce new solutions and outline best practices across all those sectors and subsectors within them. Most importantly, we create a pipeline of bankable projects for private sector financing and sometimes the public as well. We do that by piloting innovative U.S. technologies and connecting to U.S. expertise and resources. So a little bit on some of the Pacific Island activities that we have funded recently. We've really ramped up our presence in the region. I think we have 5 or 6 countries under our grant mechanism currently. We also just had staff cover 6 different island economies in the last few weeks. I unfortunately wasn't part of that, but that means that I'll be up next and hopefully I can see some of you on the ground. So feasibility studies, I don't think I have to go too in depth as to what exactly those are, but we have funded a feasibility study in Tonga in support of the project owner, or who we refer to as the grantee, Tonga Power Limited, as well as the U.S. contractor Grid Market LLC. This is really looking at a strategy for renewable energy transformation and decarbonization within the power sector. Anything from feasibility of solar PV, battery energy storage, wind, EV infrastructure, and several others that you see on the screen. And this really is in support of Tonga's strategic energy goals. So we have the ability to tailor projects to meet the goals of all partners involved. We also have reserved funding for a project in Fiji for a mini grid deployment feasibility study. We'll be working with the Ministry of Finance, formerly the Ministry of Economy, as well as the U.S. contractor is the Arizona State University Laboratory for Energy and Power Solutions. This feasibility study will look at detailed business models for up to 75 priority locations, primarily in the eastern division of Fiji, so that far right-hand portion. Looking at rural island electricity connectivity. And as you see, the study will cover many different aspects and connects to actually some of the projects that were mentioned a little bit earlier. Technical assistance, again, filling gaps in technical analysis, regulatory reform, some of the key industry standards. We supported a power utility ICT roadmap. This was with P&G Power Limited as the project sponsor, as well as Enernex being the US contractor. This is looking at an ICT roadmap and a range of different technology applications that can be implemented by the partners in country. And again, was looking to advance a P&G power electrification partnership. Similarly, we worked with the Central Bank of the Solomon Islands and a U.S. contractor, iOS Partners, to look at an ICT infrastructure modernization for the central bank and guide sort of their ICT improvements over the near and medium term. More on the partnership building program. So, reverse trade missions, really looking at standards, sharing best practices and engagement. We worked on recently a regional airport checkpoint design reverse trade mission. This included delegates from Fiji, Kiribati, and Samoa. They attended the TSA's International Design Symposium and toured 3 U.S. airports and passenger and baggage to look at passenger and baggage screening facilities across the United States. And that delegation came over very recently. We do have another reverse trade mission coming up where we will be bringing over a delegation of port sector officials from P&G, Solomon Islands, Samoa, and Fiji to look at best practices across a range of subsectors within the ports area. So port security, port IT, cargo scanning, climate resilience, and many, many other topics, and that will be coming up later this year. One thing that I want to mention in conjunction with some of our transportation work, we do have a U.S. Southeast Asia and Pacific Islands Aviation Cooperation Program. This was formerly just in Southeast Asia and recently expanded to the Pacific Islands. It is a very, very popular program with all of our partners. This is industry driven. So there's a group of industry partners that are engaged in this and government supported, and provide a forum to share best practices, expertise again, and foster commercial cooperation in civil aviation. We have a workshop coming up under that, UAS delivery technologies within the Pacific workshop in March 14th and 15th. We will be working with the Department of Transportation, the FAA, and TSA to look at regulations, testing, and identifying technologies in these areas, which is really, I think, a new and innovative, emerging subsector within transportation, and I think going to be a really great workshop. And I believe we're expanding that out to a few other sectors, perhaps including healthcare and applications for UAS to deliver supplies in the Pacific Islands. I don't personally handle this program, but we do have a different team within USTDA that handles our global procurement initiative. And this really focuses on training public sector officials on things such as life cycle cost analysis, best value determination, and really helping with that capacity building and workforce enablement across a range of different partners globally. The reason why I mention this is because there was a recent Pacific Islands public procurement training program that was done for a range of partners, including Fiji, Kiribati, P&G, Solomon Islands, Tonga, and Tuvalu, looking at many of the topics that I have just mentioned. So getting into how you can work with USTDA and how we get proposals into our pipeline. A lot of it comes through the US embassies around the world, particularly work very closely with the commercial service and the econ staff from the State Department. So that kind of comes maybe at like 50% of our proposals come in through those channels. As I mentioned, we do go on in-country scoping missions and do some business development outreach to US companies. And really what I wanted to focus on today is call for proposals. So USTDA does maintain an ongoing rolling application process, but we do special call for proposals around key initiatives that the agency and or administration are focused on. And we do have a Pacific Island Strategic Infrastructure Initiative and a call for proposals open for that. So the Biden-Harris administration announced increased infrastructure investment in Pacific Island countries. It's been mentioned many, many times today. And in response, USTDA has deployed this call for proposals to solicit new ideas for feasibility studies, technical assistance, and pilot projects. I can share a link if it hasn't already been shared with you, showing you eligible countries, the types of things that are in our concept note. And we ask for no more than 5-page proposal initially to be submitted by April 5th of this year. And then a member of our staff will be in touch. But this is a really great way to engage with USTDA, and happy to provide more information on that. And one thing I will mention is that proposals can come from either project owners or partners in country or US companies. So it can come from both, but we'd need both of those partners engaged together at some point in the project development. Another key feature for the agency right now is our global partnership for climate smart infrastructure, which you probably picked up on by some of the projects that I was sharing. Looking at accelerating scaling pathways to decarbonization, primarily focused on energy and transportation, but there is a little bit more nuance to it than that. Similar to the Pacific Island call for proposals, we did have a call for proposals focused on climate smart infrastructure about a year and a half ago now, where we received over 275 proposals for projects from partners around the world. So just showing you the scale and level of commitment that we have to some of these initiatives that we have going on. Last but not least, what do we look for in our grants? Already mentioned on the trade and development side of the ball game, but also looking at financial and economic viability of a project. The 2 contractor selection options. The one main one for call for proposals to keep in mind is our sole source model. So this is where a project owner and a US company come to us together, or one engages the other. And we go through an evaluation of that project with both stakeholders engaged at the outset of development. Our grant amount typically ranges from 500,000 to 1.5 million, but this is not a set range, just the typical average. And we have the ability to work with a whole host of project sponsors. So on the government side of things, federal, state, municipal, state-owned enterprises, and obviously the private sector. These slides will be shared with you afterwards. There is a link to the project proposal outline. That is the key for the Pacific Island call for proposals. But in terms of how that grant process would work, again, there's a basic concept note that has key project overview, fundamentals, economic and a little bit of financial analysis, very early preliminary high level, some of the US exports that will be generated as part of the project. We do ask for some information on that front, as well as a tentative scope of work and a budget. Once that's submitted through that call for proposals or to USTDA staff member, a member of staff like myself would be in touch to discuss your proposal, hopefully tailor it to fit our funding specifications, which would get us to step 2, that proposal submission. Then once we think it's in a good place, we have a technical expert on retainer that helps provide a funding recommendation, as well as works with the partners to develop the scope of work and the budget and fit TDA requirements. So they're a resource, and then we present that project to the USTDA executive team. They review every project that comes that is funded by the agency to hopefully have a positive funding decision. I would say from submission of the concept note on through to getting that positive funding decision can take anywhere from 3 to 6 months, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter, but that is typically the average. So I will leave you with that. My contact details are here. If I don't handle the sector that you're interested in, there's a member of our staff that does. So please do reach out if you don't remember anything else about this presentation, and we're happy to always have conversations. Thank you.
Thank you, Brent. Really appreciate all the excellent work that you're doing at USTDA and the information that you shared with us today, and your willingness to be open to receiving inquiries from the audience here today. Next, I would like to introduce Aquila Tawake. He is Deputy Director at Georesources and Energy Program at GM Division, the Pacific Community at SPC. And he's going to be talking a bit more about Pacific Island countries' project needs in relation to the energy sector. For example, what are the related priorities and how are Pacific Island countries going about addressing them, as well as where do Pacific Island countries need the most contribution to address these priorities, and how can entities participating in today's forums help and participate. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Aquila Tawake to share his presentation. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Veronica, and hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank PICHTR, as well as Veronica and her colleagues for the invitation to participate on this panel, number 3 for the Pacific Islands Climate Collaborative 2023 Forum. First of all, I work for the Pacific community based here in Suva, Fiji. And I would like to say a little bit about my organization. As you can see on my first slide there, this is taken out from our strategic plan 2022 to 2031. We have 4 strategic goals. The goal 1 is all Pacific people to benefit from sustainable development. And goal 2, all Pacific communities and cultures are empowered and resilient. And goal 3, all Pacific people to reach their full potential and live long and healthy lives. And then the goal 4 is 1, SPC delivers integrated programs through streamlined services. And then we also have our sectors and disciplines that are listed there. There are so many areas that we work in and serve our member countries. We have 22 Pacific Island countries and territories that we serve. And highlighted in yellow is the area that my program is responsible for, which is the energy security area, as well as sustainable georesources. And in assisting the countries in the implementation of the development goals and strategies, we also contribute to the sustainable development goals of the United Nations. And then for the SPC key focus areas, according to our strategic plan, as I have mentioned, the key focus area is on resilient and climate action, which is the main focus area of the organization. And there are other 6 key focus areas you can see on this slide, also including sustainable economies and livelihoods, as well as natural resources and biodiversity and food system, and others. So these are the main focus areas that we are providing assistance to our member countries. And for further information, you can access through the SPC website given on this slide. Yeah, and then just to highlight some of the Pacific Island countries and territories issues and challenges, I'm sure you have heard this from Mitch, the presentation from the World Bank, but I would like to highlight some of these, that the region is most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, as we are all aware, and about 80% of the Pacific Island countries and territories commercial energy uses petroleum, and this is very close to the figures that Mitch presented earlier during this forum. And 70% of the electricity generated from fossil fuel, and still 30% of our population in the Pacific, they still lack access to energy. As we have mentioned in a number of presentations here, is because of the low usage or utilization of energy in the region, because of a certain percentage or significant percentage of population in the region, particularly those who are living in remote and the outer islands, remote areas and the outer islands, they still don't have access to energy, in particular in Papua New Guinea, Solomon Islands and Vanuatu. And also the region in terms of the transport sector is nearly 100% petroleum fuel, even though we are interested in the transition to e-mobility and the decarbonization of the transport sector. But as we stand, it's nearly 100% fuel from petroleum. And renewable energy investments are not enough to achieve our NDC goals and commitments. We have some of the ambitious NDC goals and commitments in the world. And in order to do that, the investment by the countries and in collaboration with the partners are not enough to achieve that. And also the energy efficiency initiatives are not enough to contribute to the decarbonization of our economies. And also what we realize when working with the partners and also with the countries, that access to finance is, is very challenging, particularly for energy projects where blended funding are mostly required. And we are talking to a number of partners on this front, but we find it challenging, and also it's a long process that you need to follow in order to access those climate finance. Yes, some of the presenters who presented earlier, they mentioned about variable infrastructure resources that are available in our region, particularly the volcanic islands or the bigger islands in the countries like Fiji, Solomon Islands, and PNG. They have a wide range of renewable resources that they can tap into, particularly solar, hydro, wind, biomass, and biogas. And they have other potential like geothermal and palm hydro, energy storage, and also ocean energies. And if we go to the raised limestone island like Nauru, Tonga, and Niue, they have probably potential for solar PV and wind. And then they also have potential for ocean energies. But for the low-lying atoll island countries like Kiribati, Marshall Islands, Tuvalu, their main source of energy is solar. Yeah, and then though they don't have any other sources of renewable energy apart from the potential of ocean energy, as we've heard from the previous presentation, OTEC, tide, and wave, for example. So we have a broad range of potential and also existing renewable energy technologies that have been installed in our region. And then Mitch has also highlighted about this framework for energy security and resilience in the Pacific that was developed over 2020 to 2021, and it was endorsed by the Pacific leaders in 2021 as the framework that will guide the decarbonization and also the transitioning away from fossil fuel across the region. As you would note from this slide, we have 6 priority areas from A to F. And under those priority areas, we have a number of initiatives, a total of 23 initiatives. So this is the framework that SPC is leading in implementing together with the countries and the various partners, including the crop agencies, namely the Pacific Islands Forum, the Secretariat of the Pacific Regional Environment Program, or SPREP, and also the Pacific Power Association and the University of the South Pacific. And in terms of the priority initiatives for the next 3 to 5 years, after the endorsement by our leaders of the framework that I have mentioned earlier, we have been consulting widely with countries as well with the partners, particularly in 2021 and 2022. And then we have agreed on these 14 priority areas as the priorities for the next 3 to 5 years. The first one is the financing the implementation of the framework. Yeah, the framework, we are working with a number of partners at this stage, but we welcome other partners who would like to participate to implement this 10-year framework from 2021 to 2030 that we require the resources in order to implement the framework. And secondly, access to climate finance, as I have already mentioned, it's quite a challenge at the moment, but we are reaching out to partners such as PFAN and CFAN and the Green Climate Fund and others in order to accelerate access to climate finance so that we can contribute to accelerating the transition away from fossil fuel. And then number 3 is fostering off-grid energy access in rural communities through solar home system, mini grids, and solar freezers and clean cooking. These are some of the initiatives that are being undertaken by a number of countries, but we require more in order to increase the energy access across the region. Most of the Pacific Island countries, they I think they are either reach 100% renewable energy access, excuse me, not renewable, but energy access, or they are close to 100%. But the issue here, most of these countries, they don't have access to energy 24 hours per day. Yeah, particularly in the rural and remote islands, they have access to energy, for example, only for 3 to 4 hours a day. So they don't have access 24/7 to energy. And in addition to that, some communities, they still don't have access to energy. So fostering off-grid access to rural community is a real priority for the region. And also, through the assistance or the funding assistance of the government of Australia, we implement what we call the Pacific Appliance Labeling and Standards for an energy efficiency program that was very popular throughout with the Pacific, but it's ended in 2019. But we would like to enhance that, to build on that, and assist the countries with their minimum energy performance standards and labeling. And also number 5, enabling the decarbonization of land and maritime transport. As we know, we are currently implementing what we call the regional policy, regional e-mobility policy and program that had been that was endorsed by the countries, and we are currently implementing that in our effort to decarbonize the transport sector. And in addition to that, we are also talking with a number of partners, and we are organizing with the government of Vanuatu the next Pacific Regional Energy Ministers meeting, Energy and Transport Ministers meeting that will be held in Port Vila, Vanuatu on the 8th to the 12th of May. And one of the major issues that we will be discussing is the decarbonization of land and maritime transport, because without decarbonizing the transport sector, we cannot reach our goal that our leaders have committed to for a carbon neutral by 2050. And number 6, supporting the private sector and investment in energy is one of our roles, is to not only providing the enabling environment, but also supporting the IPPs who would like to come and invest in the region, in the countries, and also including entrepreneurs and building the private sector in the region to participate on renewable energy and energy efficiency initiatives. And number 7, scaling up of energy initiatives such as the waste to energy and biogas. Currently, SPC is implementing a waste to energy project in 5 Pacific Island countries funded by the European Union through the ACP Secretariat in Brussels, and also a biogas project funded by the US Embassy here in Suva through the Bureau of Energy Resources out of the US. And we would like to scale up those initiatives to commercial level, particularly for waste to energy. One of the big issues in the region is waste management. And we think that using those waste to generate energy is a sustainable way of managing those the waste resources, particularly in the urban centers throughout the region. And then number 8 is enhancing stability of the grid connected variable renewable energy. We've heard this several times throughout this forum, and we would like to emphasize that one. This has been highlighted by power utilities in the region, as well as other partners, that we would like to work with partners to ensure the stability. As we heard, that the grid in the Pacific, they are very small, and they are unstable when variable renewable energy resources are connected to the grid. And we need a mechanism to manage that, as we have heard in the previous presentation. And also one of the areas that that we would also like to emphasize is strengthening women in energy. The last energy framework, when we reviewed the last energy framework that was implemented by SPC with other partners from 2010 to 2020, this is one area that that we the review highlighted that very slow progress was achieved in the last decade, and we would like to strengthen this. And fortunately, the U.S. Government through the Bureau of Energy Resources and the U.S. Embassy here in Fiji, they were able to fund a Pacific Women in Energy Conference last year, where we identified priority areas to support the empowerment and the participation of women in energy. And also, I need to highlight here that we have what we call the PEGSEP, which is the Pacific Energy and Gender Strategic Action Plan 2020 to 2030, that was developed by Econola out of Canada, and SPC is leading the implementation of the strategy to ensure women empowerment and participation in the energy sector. And number 10, strengthening the independent energy regulation in the Pacific. OPRA stands for the Office of the Pacific Energy Regulators Alliance. It's being hosted here at SPC, and the current funding is provided by ADB to the OPRA members. And we currently have 9 Pacific Island countries or energy regulators who are members of OPRA. And we are also encouraging other Pacific Island countries to join OPRA, and they are in the process of joining OPRA. It's just to ensure that that we provide independent energy regulation and support the economies of our Pacific Island countries and territories through sound and independent energy regulations. And number 11, supporting the participation in energy, supporting and participating in energy, water, and food nexus, an area that we are working with a number of partners at the moment. But unfortunately, the project that we are working on with the funding, potential funding from the EU, was not approved. So, but we are looking for other ways of supporting the energy, water, and food nexus in the region. Yeah, and in terms of facilitating the development of green hydrogen at number 12, most of the countries, they have shown interest to explore green hydrogen as an alternative fuel to support particularly not only for electricity generation, but also supporting heavy vehicles, fueling heavy vehicles for road transport and shipping in the region. And then number 13 is to explore the development of alternative renewable energy sources. As I have mentioned in one of my earlier slides, that's a number of countries in the region, they have geothermal potential that are not tapped into at the moment, and also pumped hydro storage, and also all of the Pacific Island countries, they have ocean energy potential that can also be harnessed to increase their renewable energy mix solution. And then lastly, incorporating the cross-cutting areas such as policy and the development of legislation and roadmaps and data management and training and capacity building to support all the areas that I have mentioned above. So that's it at the moment. And I would this is my last slide. I would like to refer back to the framework that I mentioned as the guiding document that will assist us to track progress and work with partners to implement in order to accelerate the transitioning away from fossil fuel to renewable energy sources. What we call one framework, many partners. You can see the logos of many partners a number of partners that we are working together with in implementing this regional framework. But these are not an exhaustive list. There are other partners who are not listed here, who are also in the background working with SPC and these partners to implement the regional energy framework. Thank you very much for your attention. Back to you, Veronica.
Thank you so much, Aquila. Really appreciate you sharing the Pacific Island country regions needs, priorities. And I'm also happy that you touched on green hydrogen, as that was one of the questions that was brought up through the Q&A. I realize we are running a bit behind schedule. However, I believe that the presentation from all of our panelists were just excellent and rich with content. So we would like to do just maybe like 5 minutes of Q&A with panel 3. If anybody is able to continue joining us, we'd greatly appreciate it. We also understand that other people also have other schedules to attend to. We are going to be providing the recording as well as the presentations to everybody that registered for this forum. I would like to turn it over to Naoki Nagai, who is going to ask some questions to our panelists here.
Thank you. So we are going a little bit over time. So let me ask quickly to Tadayuki, Brent, and Aquila one question each. So for Tadayuki Ogawa-san, regarding the second phase of the hybrid power generation system, when will it take place, and would there be a call for proposal, and how would people access that information?
Well, now we are going to conduct the survey for the possible target countries by JICA, probably starting from this June or July. And then after that, we'll be able to conclude what we call the record of discussion, the official documents between government and government. So then after that, we are going to publicize the invitation for the bids for the consultants for this or the experts for this regional technical cooperation project. That will be probably in October or November this year. So yes, then at the time, of course, you'll be able to find out such information at our website from JICA, for the Japanese consultants and consulting firms and so on. So yeah, then we'll start the cooperation, technical cooperation, probably December or January next year. Yeah, that's the overall schedule.
Yeah, so this year, later summer and fall. Thank you. And then for Brent, one question is, what are the priority project types or sectors for the Pacific Island Strategic Infrastructure RFP?
Yeah, great question. So I would say, relating directly back to our 5 priority sectors, with probably less of a focus on agribusiness. So I'd really highlight ICT, energy, transportation, and healthcare are the probably big 4 areas that we will be looking into. But yeah, those are the main 4 that I would highlight, with obviously a myriad of subsectors under those. Thanks.
Thank you. And then finally, Aquila, there are great priority list. If people who are not from SPC or the foreign entities would like to collaborate with you and SPC, how would they do that? How would they go about?
Thank you, Naoki. I just want to mention here that SPC, our organization, is the lead regional organization in the Pacific, providing support to the countries in to supporting their energy transition. Yeah, we play 2 roles. One is the coordination of regional efforts, and secondly, we also implementing a number of energy projects as we speak. Yeah, so I think if anyone is interested, I'm available for. You can just contact me, and then I can provide some answers. Or I can put you through in touch with whoever you would like to reach out to. Particularly, we work very closely with the Pacific Island countries, and we work with very well with our counterparts in each of those countries, and then we can reach out very easily to them to support anyone who would like to work with the countries or with regional organizations like SPC or any of our other partners.
Oh,
Thank you.
That's great, Aquila, because that was identified as the key for dialogue with the partners, with the Pacific Island countries, governments, right? So that would be great. Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
I just would like to use just this last opportunity to let everyone know that we are working in collaboration with the government of Vanuatu now to host, that Vanuatu will host the next energy ministers meeting, energy and transport ministers meeting. The last one was held in Apia, Samoa in September 2019. So the fourth one, but this one will be the fourth, will be the fifth Pacific Regional Energy and Transport Ministers meeting, which will be held in Port Vila on 8 to the 12th of May. And anyone who's interested to attend the meeting, I can send you the invitation and you can then register. So just reach out to me. My email address is aquilatawake or aquilat@spc.int. Thank you.
Thank you, Aquila. Feel free to share information about that meeting in the chat. Also, just as a friendly reminder, the agenda is up on PICHTR's website under the Pacific Islands Climate Collaborative webpage. And the agenda has the contact information for all of the speakers and panelists today. So with that, I would like to thank the panelists from our third panel, Tadajuki Ogawa, Brent Harrison, and Aquila Tawake. Thank you so much. And I would like to say thank you to all of our other panelists as well, our keynote speakers, special remarks that were made as well, and all of the audience that are here with us today. Really exceptional conversations that were held. I was following the chat and the Q&A, so I'm hoping that everybody got a lot out of today's conversation. What is next? We are going to be sending you an email with information on how to access the forum's recording as well as all of the presentations. And I also put in the chat a survey. It's very brief. It shouldn't take you more than 3 minutes, but it helps us improve our programming to make sure that we are delivering content that you care about. So if you get a chance, we would greatly appreciate receiving your feedback. With that, this concludes the second Pacific Islands Climate Collaborative Forum. I would like to thank all of our collaborators at PICHTR, as well as all of the presenters, panelists, speakers who made today's forum possible. And thank you to all of the audience. Until next time, thank you so much, everyone. Mahalo and talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.